Cinnamon and the Enchanted Candy Kingdom. The Sweetest Adventures of a Magical Witch. Once upon a time in a distant land, there lived a young witch named Cinnamon. Cinnamon was unlike any other witch, for her magic was unique. While others learned to summon storms or brew potions, Cinnamon's spells brought sweets to life. Her wand, a peppermint stick swirled with red and white, sparkled whenever she cast a spell, and wherever she went, the air smelled like freshly baked cookies. She lived in a cozy cottage made of gingerbread, with candy cane pillars and windows made of spun sugar. One bright morning, Cinnamon woke to find her garden overtaken by a magical accident. Overnight, her modest vegetable garden had transformed into a jungle of sweets. Giant marshmallow flowers bloomed alongside chocolate shrubs, and licorice vines twined around her sugar plum trees. Cinnamon giggled as a cotton candy bush puffed up nearby. "Oops," she laughed. "Maybe I used a bit too much magic before bed." Just as she was about to reverse the spell, a frantic knocking came at her candy cane door. She opened it to find a gingerbread man with a worried expression. He wore a messenger's cap made of frosting and his gumdrop buttons wobbled as he spoke. "Lady Cinnamon, you must come quickly. The Candy Kingdom is in great danger," he exclaimed. "The Candy Kingdom?" Cinnamon asked, startled. It was a magical land where everything was made of sweets, gumdrop mountains, caramel rivers, and forests of licorice. The kingdom was ruled by the kind and wise Sugar Plum Fairy, whose magic kept the entire land sweet and joyful. "Yes," the gingerbread man continued. "The Sugar Plum Fairy has gone missing, and without her magic, everything is turning sour. The candy creatures are losing their sweetness, and the kingdom is crumbling." Cinnamon's heart sank. "I'll help at once," she said. She grabbed her peppermint wand, donned her sugar-spun cloak, and hopped onto her jelly bean broomstick. With the gingerbread man guiding her, they flew across the vast candy plains, over fields of sugarcane and marshmallow hills, toward the Candy Kingdom. As they arrived, the once beautiful and colorful land was now in disarray. The vibrant gumdrop mountains had dulled to lifeless gray. The caramel rivers had thickened into sludge, and the once bustling taffy streets were cracked and crumbling. Candy creatures, once so cheerful and full of energy, now wandered aimlessly, their sugary sparkle fading away. Cinnamon even spotted a licorice dragon, usually a magnificent creature, now sluggish and droopy, its black scales turning to an ashy white. "This is worse than I imagined," Cinnamon whispered to herself, her heart heavy with concern. They landed in front of the Grand Sugar Palace, a towering castle made entirely of crystallized sugar. But even the palace, which once glittered like diamonds, had lost its shine. Inside, the royal council of candy creatures gathered in despair. Gumdrop knights, caramel bears, and licorice foxes all murmuring worriedly. A candy cane advisor approached Cinnamon. "Thank goodness you're here. We fear the worst. Without the Sugar Plum Fairy's magic, our kingdom will soon crumble entirely." "I will find her," Cinnamon promised, "but I need to know where she was last seen." The advisor nodded gravely. "She was last seen in the licorice forest, beyond the gumdrop mountains. Some say a dark force has taken her." Determined, Cinnamon set off on her journey. The road was long and treacherous, winding through fields of sour candies that snapped and hissed as she passed. She flew over the sticky caramel rivers, now clogged with hard lumps. At last, she reached the edge of the licorice forest, a dark, twisted place where few dared to venture. The trees here were tall and menacing, their licorice branches curling like claws. The air was thick with bitterness, a stark contrast to the usual sweetness of the Candy Kingdom. As Cinnamon ventured deeper into the forest, she began to sense something sinister. The once playful candy creatures of the forest were now twisted and warped by a bitter magic. Gummy bears had turned into ferocious beasts with sharp candy teeth, and the once friendly marshmallow birds now shrieked and circled overhead like dark shadows. At the heart of the forest, she found the source of the darkness. A towering figure made entirely of bitter dark chocolate stood before her. His sharp features and cold eyes glinted as he held the sugar plum fairy captive in a crystal of rock candy, her magic being drained into a cauldron of molten dark chocolate. "Who dares enter my realm?" the dark chocolate sorcerer growled, his voice deep and menacing. "I am Cinnamon, and I've come to free the sugar plum fairy," she declared, her peppermint wand glowing in her hand. The sorcerer laughed, a bitter, unpleasant sound. "You think your sweet magic can defeat me? I thrive on bitterness. Sweetness is weak." Cinnamon stood tall, refusing to be intimidated. "Sweetness isn't weak. It's what brings joy and happiness to the world, and that's more powerful than you realize." With a flick of her wand, she unleashed a torrent of magical sweetness. A whirlwind of cotton candy surrounded the sorcerer, and candy-coated lightning crackled in the air. The ground beneath him turned into soft fudge, trapping his feet as Cinnamon's magic grew stronger. But the dark chocolate sorcerer wasn't done yet. He summoned a storm of bitter cocoa powder, filling the air with a choking fog. Cinnamon struggled to see, but she remembered the words her grandmother, a wise witch, once told her. "When things seem darkest, let your heart guide you." Cinnamon closed her eyes and focused on the joy and sweetness within her heart. She thought of the smiles candy brought to children, the laughter shared over sweets, and the warmth of friendship. With renewed strength, she cast her final spell, a brilliant burst of rainbow-colored magic that shattered the bitter fog. The dark chocolate sorcerer, overwhelmed by the sweetness, melted into a harmless puddle of chocolate. The crystal holding the sugar plum fairy shattered, and she was freed, her wings sparkling once again. The fairy smiled warmly at Cinnamon. "You've done it, brave witch. You've saved the Candy Kingdom." As the fairy's magic returned, the licorice forest transformed back into a place of light and sweetness. The trees became bright and friendly once more, and the candy creatures regained their cheerful forms. Back at the palace, the kingdom was restored to its former glory. The caramel rivers flowed smoothly, the gumdrop mountains gleamed in the sunlight, and the candy creatures danced in the streets. Cinnamon was hailed as a hero, her bravery and kindness celebrated throughout the kingdom. She visited often, making sure the sweetness never faded and that no dark magic ever returned. And so Cinnamon's sweet adventures continued, always spreading joy and sweetness wherever she went, in a world where magic and candy intertwined. And